Hello and welcome to another Duval Schools podcast presented by Duval County Public Schools. My name is Matt Began.
And I'm Vicki Pierre.
And today on Real Talk, we're joined by Dr. Nikolai Vitti. Dr. Vitti, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I always enjoy our conversations.
Well, first of all, we are in the month of September, and many people may not realize this. It is actually Attendance Awareness Month. So I think the question we have is, if an entire month is dedicated to this cause, is this really an issue in our schools?
I wouldn't say it's an issue across the board. I would say that we do have concerns with particular students that miss too much school. And I guess you then have to ask, well, how many times is too many? And I would say, as a community, we have to agree that children should be in school every day. That even one day of being absent can cause students to start to fall behind. And it can become frustrating for teachers who are trying to make sure that all the content is covered in obviously a short amount of time. But every day matters. But again, we know that some children are sick. There are issues at home. Maybe a relative is sick or ill, and so there are exceptions. But we should try as hard as we can to make sure that children come to school every day. But overall, no, I don't think attendance is a concern district-wide. Most of our attendance rates are in the 90s, high 90s. But we do have to make a commitment, everyone, parents, teachers, even children themselves, to make sure that we're going to school every day.
So how does student attendance directly affect our district?
Well, I would say on the most relevant way is that when a child's not in school, they're not learning, and that they can fall behind. On the other hand, when we're talking about older students, so those that are more in middle school and high school, oftentimes we see that when children, even teenagers more, start missing school, they start picking up bad habits. They may start to run with the wrong crowd. They develop a culture that's outside of school and adult supervision, and that can lead to making some wrong decisions in the community. And then they start to fall behind in credits, which then puts them behind as far as graduation. From a fiscal level, when students do not attend school on certain dates, then the district does not generate the allocation from Tallahassee for that student, and it just works on there are certain days that we do counts. It's called the FTE count, and if a student is not there at that particular day, then that can hurt our funding when it comes to funding we receive from Tallahassee. But more than anything else, we need students in school so that they can learn. And I'd also say, as a parent, sometimes I know my children wake up and they say, I don't want to go to school today. And it's my responsibility, and obviously my wife's, to continue to push them to say, no, you are going to school, even if you have a little bit of a headache or you're sick. And I think that just develops the discipline and the perseverance that you have to show as you get older with your job and just life in general.
And so I think many people in the community may not realize this, but you made a reference to this. The district has to report these numbers to the state. I know there's a count on the 10th day and on the 20th day. So I know those two counts have passed. What trends are you seeing right now when it comes to enrollment?
So we're seeing that our enrollment is higher than we anticipated, which is very positive. It's positive for several reasons. One, I've been continuing to say that we are going to define success by parents wanting to stay in our school district and students and parents that are opting into our school district that may have not done that before. So if going back to the same market analogy that I'm using in this competitive environment where parents have options to go to charter schools or even private schools or use opportunity scholarships, when they're choosing us, that means that they are buying in and they believe in what we're trying to do for their children at the classroom level and at the school level. So our enrollment is higher than we anticipated. We had fewer students go to charter schools. We had fewer students to take other options, and we had more students come in. The challenge of that is we didn't anticipate that. It's a good challenge to have, but we're facing challenges right now regarding class size, books, and distributing books. We're working through that, but that's a positive challenge to have. We just have to work fast in order to give students what they need so that they can be successful in school, and the environment is right for teachers so that they can focus on learning, teaching and learning.
And I don't mean to cut you off there. How do you go about addressing that issue? Is it more classrooms, more teachers, getting those supplies expedited? How do you do that?
Well, I think we have to look at where we're at as a school district. Last year, we were originally fined $7 million for not making class size. 86% of the classes that are required to be in class size compliance were in class size. That was the lowest as far as being in compliance throughout the state at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. So that $7 million penalty ended up being worked down to $1.5 million as we continue to work with the state to reduce the number. We've committed through our strategic plan and in partnership with our school board to be 95% in compliance or higher. So what we're doing right now is we've already conducted our budget process, and we know what schools have more students than anticipated and those that have fewer. So we're moving teachers, we call them surplus teachers, from schools that had lower enrollment and moving them to schools with higher enrollment based on their certification and based on the subject area or grade level that they teach. That process started last week and continues into this week. As far as the timeline is concerned, we are exactly where we were last year. And so we will start seeing some teachers move to different schools. We'll start to see some schools hire new teachers because enrollment is higher. So as that works itself through, so starting last week into this week, we'll start seeing class sizes reduce in the core content areas, and those are mainly kindergarten, second grade, and any third grade to 12th grade that the class ends with an FCAT or an end-of-course exam. So those will start to lower, and we'll start to see the class sizes be much more manageable. Now, this is not a district-wide issue per se. It's defined or isolated to certain schools and certain classrooms right now, mainly those schools that had a bump in enrollment, which again is a positive challenge to have. Our other challenge, and a positive one, is we're offering many more elective classes at our middle schools and high schools. We added an extra period to the day, so all students are now able to take elective classes, where in the past this didn't happen. And so because we're offering more elective classes, we have to create more sections, and we have to hire more elective teachers to reduce the class size. When it's all said and done, most of our classrooms, again, I think 95% or more, will be in class size for the core areas. Our elective classes should not be larger than 35 to 38. If we have classrooms that have computers and they only have 35 computers, then we should only have 35 students in that class. So all of those things, all those logistics are being worked out, and we should start to see leveling and stabilization regarding class size toward the end of the latter part of this week and into next week. The state takes pulls our data for class size in the middle of October, so we have roughly a month to level all of that out. And this is a new process for the school district. The school district never fully committed to making class size, and so the amount of movement we haven't seen before. And in many ways, the school district, many other large school districts, created the processes that I'm talking about 4 years ago and went through the change of trying to make class size. The school district never was truly committed to class size because in their estimate, the penalty, it was more worthwhile to pay the penalty than to level and even out classes to make class size. I think as a district, we don't look positively statewide, and especially to the legislature or the state board, when we were only 86% in compliance and the lowest performing, if you will, or lowest compliance district in the state.
You mentioned a lot of changes that are going on in the district, and one of the things we're hearing in the communications office, so I'm sure you're hearing it also, is inside the kindergarten classes. Parents and teachers are voicing some concerns with the number of tests that are given to 5-year-olds.
Well, this year we're having to fully implement Common Core in K-2, which is our primary. And so the Common Core standards are much more rigorous than the next generation Sunshine State standards, and we have to make sure that our children are where they should be as they move into third grade when the high stakes testing comes into play. But more importantly than that, we want to make sure that children have the basis and the foundation for reading and mathematics, and that happens in those K-2 grade levels. Historically, in our district, and really districts throughout the country, we haven't really put a lot of emphasis on making sure that students are learning certain things from kindergarten to second grade. And so what we did going into this year is we created curriculum guides that mapped out exactly what should be taught when, and having assessments linked to that to make sure that what we teach children learn, and so that we can go back and reteach that information. And so you need testing to do that. So starting at the kindergarten level, the state requires a VPK readiness assessment to determine how effective 4-year-old programs were. We are required by the state to implement that assessment at the beginning of the year, so that's a non-negotiable. As a district, we have not been faithful to ensuring that test is administered to all kindergartners, so that was very different for a lot of kindergarten teachers and kindergartners in general. But after hearing, aside from that, we listened to teachers, and there was a concern with using FAIR, which was our reading diagnostic tool last year and the years before. So we removed FAIR, and we incorporated new assessments like the diagnostic assessment in reading DAR, and then we implemented iReady, which was a basic skills test for math. And then linked to those new curriculum guides were curriculum guide assessments that were exactly aligned to the curriculum that was being taught. But and linking that to the assessments that are required by law to connect to kindergarten, first and second grade teachers. So admittedly, there was more testing this year in the beginning of the year than most kindergartners, first and second graders had ever seen before. I think that those assessments are important. However, after listening to teachers this year, it's clear that we have to scale back. So what we have decided as a district is we've removed the assessments that were linked to science, art, and music at the kindergarten to second grade level, and we've made those optional. We also, in kindergarten, will only have a baseline, so a beginning year assessment in reading linked to the standards and math at the beginning of the year, and then one at the end of the year, and not periodic ones throughout the year. So we've already scaled back on what we initially thought of as assessments for kindergarten. We've also scaled back assessments in first grade. In second grade, we haven't heard as much concern, so we're basically keeping it the same. Aside from making the art, music, and science assessment optional in second grade, and that's the one at the beginning of the year and throughout the year.
So bottom line, given so much is different this school year, how do you think this school year so far and the point where we're at right now compares to years past?
Well, I think the school system is still absorbing and working through the change. And so I think most people will tell you that our new initiatives, our new way of work makes sense. It was needed. Again, the old adage is if you do the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. So we had to do something differently. I think people agree that what we're trying to do makes sense. I think it's just a matter of refining those processes and that way of work so that people feel comfortable with the change and with those processes, and then refining it to make sure that when implemented, it's done at a higher level. It's done better. And I think as the years go, that process will get better and implementation will be stronger, and people will have a better understanding of what it is that we're doing. That takes time. We're a very large district. We have over 160 schools. So that's a lot of personnel. It's a lot of kids. It's a lot of, like I said, personnel. So it takes time. And I think as we keep on going through this year after year, it'll become easier. It'll be better understood. And it'll be accepted at a higher level.
Dr. Vitti, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Real Talk. You can always catch us on DS Media at duvalschools.org.
Yes, we want y'all to email us with your questions, and we're going to be updating this on the website on a regular basis, so be sure to check duvalschools.org for the latest. Once again, I'm Vicky.
And I'm Matt, and thanks for listening.